Welcome to the Preserving Family Podcast. The purpose of this podcast is to equip you to gain insight, information, and inspiration to help you protect, teach, and guide your family during these turbulent times. Our goal is to provide tools and resources to help you strengthen and preserve your own marriages and families. Now here are your hosts, Dr. Mark and Janie Ogletree.
Well, everyone, thank you for being with us today. We're always grateful that you are joining in. And I'm super excited today. We are super excited to have my brother-in-law, Matt Cook. I've known Matt Cook since he was like 11 years old and throwing rocks at cars. Remember that, Matt?
I have no recollection of what you're talking about.
Or wrecking cars, right?
I think
when you were like 12.
We're past the statute of limitations on those, so I could admit to him now.
Matt, here's another interesting thing when you think about our paths crossing. You actually get called to serve as a missionary in the Arizona Tempe mission where we lived at the time.
That's right.
And that was kind of fun to have you come there. So Matt served in all kinds of callings in the church, especially among the youth. As a bishop, current stake president of his stake. He's married to Trista. They have 5 children and how many grandchildren now?
We are now up to 4. We went from 2 to 4 in just a couple months.
Isn't it great? It can happen like that as a grandparent, but not as a parent, right?
That's right.
So Matt, one of the cool things that brings us together today is sometime this month of August, we have a book coming out called Christ's Miracles Yesterday and Today, and we wanted to kind of talk about how miracles are alive and well, not only on this earth and in the gospel of Jesus Christ, but also in our families. Maybe let's just talk about how this book came to be for a minute.
It's kind of a cool story, isn't it?
Yeah. Who started it?
Well, I don't know. I think we were both going down separate paths, and we realized we were both thinking about writing a book about miracles separately. And when we figured that out, we're like, well, let's join forces. But it might be cool to hear how each of us got to that point.
Well, yeah, and for me, what happened is I was asked to speak at a fireside at Aspen Grove, and I don't even remember how I came on the topic of miracles. But as I was preparing for that, I started to see how these miracles could be put in these categories, like we kind of came up with this idea of there's miracles of protection and there's provision. In other words, when the Lord provides something for us, there's timing, there's healing, there's, of course, the big ones like when life is restored, but even connection, means like with financial resources, elements. Anyway, so I started really thinking about that, and then that's when I think you and I were talking, and you were at the time working kind of on the New Testament a little bit.
Yeah, I had something really triggered me. It was kind of a powerful trigger, I think, when President Nelson talked in May of 2021. He actually says, learn about miracles.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, what's there to learn? They kind of...
They just happened,
yeah.
Right?
So I started studying the New Testament miracles of Jesus, and I kind of discovered that there are about 37 of them, of distinct ones. I mean, there are more, because there's times when he says, like, hey, he healed a whole bunch of people or something, but there's 37 times when there's like an individual or group identified, or a miracle over the elements or something. And again, there's different ways you can count it. I'm not including the greatest miracle of all, his own resurrection and things like that. But so I started doing a systematic deep dive into each one of those. I just wanted to learn about each one of them, and the world just became, my eyes opened on. We learn them at a superficial level. There's some really cool, deep, hidden nuggets built in within each of those miracles. And so I wanted to write a book about each of the 37 of them.
Right.
That was my idea, and I starting to think about that.
Yeah, and then, what happened was we started thinking, hey, we could lay a foundation here of Christ and one of his miracles in one of these areas, and then we can kind of bring in either something church history or something more modern day. But we also knew that we could just retell a New Testament miracle story that everyone in the church has heard 1,000 times.
Yeah.
So I think, Matt, that was probably one of your greatest contributions, is the deep dive where I think on every one of these miracles that you're writing about, it's an entirely different perspective.
Yeah, I think I can maybe just give a really quick example of that.
Yeah.
So a very common miracle we often hear about is the miracle where Christ is asleep on the boat. They're crossing the Sea of Galilee, and the winds and the waves are just tearing the boat apart, and his apostles become really afraid for their life, which is crazy because they were all fishermen, not all of them, So they come and wake him up, and he rebukes the waves and calms the winds, and so that's, everyone talks about that. The God and Christ through His power can calm the winds and waves we experience in our lives, which is true. There's nothing that's 100% true, and it's a great metaphor for that. But the sort of the rest of the story is, where was He going? Why were they on the Sea of Galilee in the first place? And to me, that's a really profound lesson, and it shows how our two sort of parts of this book come together. Is that He was going to the other side. It turns out He got all the way, almost kills His apostles, gets over there, and there's one man who's just been beating himself up, scraping himself. He's possessed by a legion of devils, and that's the story where Jesus heals him. They cast them into the swine. The swine jump into the sea. Well, the cool part is that's all Christ did. He went over there to heal a Gentile, not even a Jew. He heals one person who society had thrown away, turns around and gets in his boat and returns. And so that, to me, that gives chills up my spine of what He'll do for one person.
Yeah.
But you made the point that you really, I mean, you brought up that President Monson did an almost identical thing.
Yeah, that's where President Monson gets on an airplane when he hears that Inge Burghardt in East Germany, or in Germany, is very ill, and he makes arrangements to fly over there, give her a blessing, and then comes right back on the next flight. But those are the type of things that highlight the miracles of Jesus, but also make them really personal, right? And that's, I think, one of the things that we wanted to bring out. And once again, when you think, Matt, what you just described of Christ loading His apostles on a boat and going across a storm-laden sea just to help one person, that helps us understand Christ in a deeper way. So.
And I think, Mark, as you're talking about that's how the whole book is. We take miracles that perhaps we thought we knew, or we do know. We kind of do a deep dive, hopefully shed some interesting new nuggets that you may not have known about. And they're not all ones original to our thinking. Other scholars have made these points, but we bring them out to life, hopefully, and then we tie them to today.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that we were quite surprised as we started to think of modern day miracles that have just happened in our own families. Mm-hmm. And this is what our podcast is all about, is about strengthening the family. And so we would want to highlight how many of Christ's miracles were actually family centered. Think of raising Jairus' daughter, healing Peter's mother-in-law, the wedding at Cana, which is often called Christ's first miracle. But the idea that Jesus cared about homes and families and relationships. But I don't know about you, Matt, but I was surprised how many of these we were coming up with just in our own families.
100%. There's some really great stories that happened to us, our kids, that are awesome.
Yeah, and then we use some of the church history, and of course there's great stories that have happened to others. We even talk about some of the miracles in the lives of our prophets and apostles when it comes to protection. In fact, I was surprised to think that almost every prophet has had a near-death experience. And President Nelson, of course, is one of those that a lot of people are familiar with that miracle in Africa where he and his wife Wendy were literally saved by angels.
Yeah. Yeah, and those stories are so incredible because President Nelson, as mentioned a minute ago, he's the one that sort of threw down the gauntlet. He's been talking about miracles since the day he was made a prophet. Yeah. Like I said, in 2021, he said we should learn about them, but since then, he's promised that we can expect them if we have faith. And he cautions, like, only your unbelief is his quote. Only your unbelief will keep God from blessing you with miracles to move mountains in your life. Yeah. So think about that. We just need to have more faith, more trust, which I think is the better word for faith is trust. Like trust in God, that the covenants we've made and our relationship with him, that he'll provide the miracles that he wants us to have. He literally says, the Lord will bless you with miracles if you believe in him, doubting nothing. And then he said, you got to do the spiritual work to see miracles. You got to pray for them. You got to expect them. So he's taught a lot about it. We don't have time to go through all those teachings today, but that's really the foundation. This book sort of proves that miracles, it gives us interesting insight from ancient miracles, but it proves that in our day, they still happen and we should expect them.
Yeah, and Matt, this quote by Heber J. Grant is one that I've been aware of for a long time and wanted to use it in the book. But he said this, he said, I bear my witness to you that if a record had been made of all of those who have been afflicted, those who have been given up to die, those who have been healed by the power of God since the establishment of the Church of Christ in our day. It would make a book much larger than the New Testament. More miracles have been performed in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints than we have any account of in the days of the Savior and his apostles. Today, sickness is cured by spiritual power. The dead have been raised. My own brother was announced to be dead, but by the power of faith he lives and presides over one of the stakes of Zion. I know as I live that the healing power of the Almighty God is in the Church of Jesus Christ, of which you or I are members. And so several years ago, in a stake priesthood meeting, I just had this idea while I was speaking that we should compile a book of miracles in our stake. So we sent out an invitation. We invited all the brethren who were there. That, as you know, that didn't go super far. Of, hey, go home and come up with a miracle and share it with us and email it in. So we had to stay on everyone for a while, and it took about a year. But over time, we were able to compile a book that we actually give to return missionaries when they come home. And we're members of our stake, because we wanted to build on this idea that if we were to record all the miracles that have happened in our day, it would fill volumes. We just wanted to show that in one stake, watch what we can do. And it was a book that was probably about half an inch thick. It probably contained about 50 to 60 miracles, but only about 25% of the active members of our stake participated, right? So if you can imagine if every active person sent in one of their miracles, we could have had several volumes probably. But that's the idea that we're highlighting, is that no, miracles do happen today. For those who think, why did they only happen when Christ was on the earth? No, we're surrounded by miracles today for sure.
And perhaps that point, when I said earlier that I thought there were 37 miracles, Christ performed hundreds, millions, probably more.
Yeah.
In fact, it was John himself, who wrote in John 21 that he said that there are also many other things which Jesus did, the which, if they should be written every one, I suppose that even the world itself could not contain the books that should be written.
Yeah.
And so just because we know that there's a sort of a discrete set of miracles that happen doesn't mean that that's an exhaustive list. They happened probably every day of his life.
Yeah, just to think we have just this small little snippet of what Christ actually did. Let me share this with you. I love it when our apostles start to quote our prophet, right? And so we know that President Nelson has taught, this idea of miracles and to seek for them and to expect them. But not long after he said that, here's Elder Holland. The future is going to be as miracle-filled and bountifully blessed as the past have been. We have every reason to hope for blessings even greater than those we have already received, because this is the work of the Almighty God. This is the church of continual revelation. This is the gospel of Christ's unlimited grace and benevolence. And so the idea that the future will be as miracle-filled and bountifully blessed as the past, I think this is something that we as parents should be teaching our children and our grandchildren about miracles, and to certainly expect them. So Matt, you know that this is a family show, right? We try to keep things rated G here, but is there anything that you came across in your studies of Christ's ministry that just really highlighted this idea that we're trying to develop these miracles in the family?
Numerous of them would fall in that category. I'll give you one of my favorites, if that's all right. So we know, John said that the very first miracle, the beginning of miracles, was the miracle of turning water into wine, which has some incredible things we won't talk about right now. But his second miracle that John talks about is really cool. So because of that, there was a nobleman. He heard about the water to wine. He came to Jesus. He traveled 20 miles from Capernaum because his son was almost dead, he thought. So he asked Jesus to return to him, actually return to Cana, and heal his son. And Jesus said, rather than going all the 20 miles away, Jesus says, just go back, go thy way, thy son liveth. And as it turns out, and I'm shortening the miracle, as it turns out, as the man is returning, his servants meet him along the way and tell him that his son has been healed. And as he sort of does the math, he realizes that the healing occurred at the very moment that Jesus said to him, to go thy way, thy son liveth.
Wow.
But perhaps my favorite part of it, maybe the part that ties into families, is that not only was this man impacted and the son lived, but it says that he himself believed and his whole house. So this man's entire household becomes converted because of this miracle that happened from a 20-mile away distance.
Yeah.
Now, this is the part I don't want, real scholars, I'm certainly not a real one, to come beat me up.
I think you're pretty real.
There are scholars who believe that they try to identify who this nobleman was. And it's a debate. So I'm not saying this is definitive, but there are scholars who believe that certain nobleman was a man named Chusa. I think that's how you say his name. Who would have been Herod's steward. And there's reasons why they think that. The same one that was referred to in Luke chapter 8. If that's true, his wife it was named Joanna. And Joanna is, if you go search for her, she's referred to in several places in the New Testament. My favorite part where she's mentioned is in Luke chapter 24, where Luke is describing who was a witness to the empty tomb. And in there, he says it was Mary Magdalene and Joanna, among others.
Wow.
Also, in other places in Luke, like in Luke chapter 8, Joanna is noted as one of the women followers of Jesus who cared for him.
Right.
And so if that's all true, which, who knows if it really 100% is, here you have this miracle impacting a family so much. The whole household becomes converted, and the mom, Joanna, becomes one of the followers, like literally following Jesus for who knows how long, and got to witness the empty tomb.
Wow.
How cool is that?
Super cool. Wow. Matt, that's really interesting because we classified that miracle, even though it could be put in different categories, but we classified it as what we called a miracle of connection. And that was one of the things that I have seen in my life, and I know you have too, but how sometimes making connections with people can be miraculous. And I remember an experience my wife and I had a few years ago where we were Christmas shopping, and the choice was, do we go to this store or this store? There were two stores right next to each other, and it didn't matter. There was no eternal life at stake here or anything like that, but I was just trying to be efficient. So I said, okay, let's go to this one first. It was Sportsman's Warehouse. I always like to tell people, because Jesus was born in a manger, I needed to buy some of my kids thousands of dollars of camping equipment for Christmas.
Great logic.
But anyway, we walk into Sportsman's Warehouse, and the first person that we see is Rainey Rogers, one of our great friends, one of our best friends from Texas. He had come up to BYU that weekend to see his kids and watch a BYU football game. But if we would have gone to the other store, we would have never seen him. Now, once again, it wasn't like he revealed, the secrets of the universe, or he had some great message to share with us from an angel. It was just a reconnection with a friend, Literally a year later, we get on an airplane in Dallas. And as we're getting on the airplane, I see a guy walking down the aisle with a huge Bucky sack. So I'm going to be my smart little self, my smart Alex self. And I'm like, hey, whatever you have in that sack, you got to share with all of us on the plane. Because I knew that it was some kind of barbecue or something. And he goes, hey! It was Rainey Rogers' brother, who actually lives in Hawaii, who was bringing a group of students from Hawaii over to Dallas for a conference.
Wow.
P.J. Rogers. And I go, P.J. Rogers, oh my gosh, where are you? You're on this plane? And he goes, oh yeah. I go, where are you sitting? He pulls it. His seat is right next to mine.
Wow.
And so we sit together for the next 2 hours, just catching up and talking. And once again, no secrets of the universe. He wasn't like, what, an angel told me that I needed to find you to tell you this really, really important thing that pertains to your salvation. But I also believe that both of those connections were miraculous in a way. Had we been on another flight or had we gone to the other store, we would have never run into those people that meant so much to us in our life. But to me, what it was a reminder of is that Heavenly Father cares about relationships.
100%.
Even if they're just something small like that. He is a God of connection. There's no question about it. And he will continue to have us find each other in the weirdest places sometimes, because that's one of the ways he orchestrates miracles.
Those are some really cool tender mercies in your life. And it just kind of reminds me about how much you see timing miracles like that in the New Testament.
Yeah.
It's incredible. So many of the miracles you could kind of classify as a tender mercy of timing, even though they involved healing or other things. Then you think of the widow of Nain. Yeah. I love that one. This was a note that we didn't actually come up with. Others have pointed this out, but Jesus shows up at this time after a woman's only son had died, and he basically had to walk almost 20 miles through the night.
Yeah.
so that he can meet this funeral procession happening right before this child's about to be buried, and he meets them at the entrance of the town of Nain at the very moment, at the very last moment you possibly could, to heal this young man, which he raises him from the dead. Timing. I mean, if that had happened an hour earlier, hour later, he never would have run.
He misses the whole thing.
Thing, and now this woman is literally saved because her only son, her only means of financial support, is saved. The other one that comes to mind is we love the story of the woman at the issue of blood.
Yeah, we tell it a lot.
All the time, and it's a great story. But the thing that, as I was doing the study, is it's a complete miracle that they even ran into each other on the street.
Right.
Because what had happened is Jesus had just come off a ship, and Jairus came to him because his daughter was near death. So Jairus comes to Jesus, says, "Come with me, my daughter's about to die." And so they're headed back to Jairus' home when this miracle happens. Well, that woman with the issue of blood, it's not like she knew that, hey, it's general conference, I might see the prophet walk across the street, I might get a glimpse of him. She had no idea he was coming. Nobody did. Because the way this all played out. So they're walking through the streets, and he happens to be there at the very moment she's on the same street.
Yeah.
And gets close enough that she can somehow reach out and touch the hem of his clothes to be healed. The whole story of that is incredible. We won't get into that necessarily right now, but just my whole point is, again, the timing. What a tender mercy that they were even in the same place at the same time. There's that kind of miracle of timing, just tender mercies. That the miracle itself is profound, but the way in which it came out, the timing, the way all the stars aligned so that Jesus and this person could be in the same place at the same time is incredible.
That's the part of the miracle, right? And so, and I love you said that Matt, because we have an entire chapter just called Miracles of Timing.
Yeah, that's true.
Matt, I think in that chapter, one of the things we talk about is President Nelson, and President Nelson had this incredible experience where, and I love to show. In our Living Prophets class at BYU, I love to show our students that these men were all incredible, awesome people before the church even knew who they were. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like President Nelson became an apostle and he started to learn how to receive revelation. I mean, he was receiving revelation for his family, so back to the family connection, his whole life. This example was told in his autobiography called From Heart to Heart. It was April the 3rd, 1969. And in their house full of children and several teenage daughters in those days, he was awakened at 3 a.m. by an impression from the Spirit. He didn't know what that meant, so he goes down into the bedroom of two of his teenage daughters, and at their window was a man peering through and trying to break into their house. And luckily, President Nelson's presence scared the man away, but once again, who knows what would have happened had he ignored that prompting or decided to put it off. I'll go down there later. But he just responds immediately. But once again, right place, right time.
That's so true. And in that same chapter, I don't want to give away our whole book, so go buy the book to really learn these. Just kidding. But we had an incredible experience. Our oldest son went on a mission to Cambodia, and what we have done with each of our kids, we go back and within 6 months of them going home, we go tour their mission.
Yeah.
And we finding the right time was very difficult for us for various reasons at that time. And anyway, we ended up going at this one time that wasn't our first choice. And the day before we left, one of our good friends showed up at our door. And he said, "Hey, I just felt inspired that there's probably someone you can help over there." And he hands me $1,000 in cash.
Wow.
And I've never been to Cambodia, and I'm sure there's thousands of people who could use the help. We no sooner got off the airplane, and we were just tired. It's a almost 30-hour trip over. I just wanted to go to the hotel and sleep off my jet lag. But
right.
Xander, our son, said, "No, I want to go visit this family that I taught and baptized." So we got in a tuk-tuk and we went 30 minutes away into just the most squalid living conditions you could possibly imagine, of a family living over a sewer. And we get there, and he had baptized a mother and her daughter and both of their kids. And the daughter was pregnant. She's married and pregnant. She's an adult daughter. And we couldn't meet her husband. He was out frantically looking for money because she was overdue. And if she wasn't taken into the hospital, like within the minute or hour, either she or the baby would die. And so, and they needed $700 in cash before they could be admitted. And so what had just happened to me a day or two before, I mean, incredible. So we are like, we load her in, take her to the hospital. We didn't have the cash on us. We didn't have any cash on us. So Xander and I ran back to the hotel while my wife got her admitted into the hospital. Came back, paid it. Baby's born and healthy to this day. We keep in touch with them. In fact, they named the baby after my son. But it was
awesome.
It was just that we're on the other side of the world, and one person is prompted to give us cash. Our trip going when we didn't even want to go, but it was the way that it worked out. We happened to run into them. The way we even met up with them was a miraculous event. Anyway, the details are more in the book, but those types of things happen. The Lord places us where He wants us to be. He times things. He's in charge. We just we sort of need to provide the motion, and He steers us where we need to be.
And be receptors of the Spirit, right? That's giving us that guidance. I think that's so good. What a great story. Wow. Another category that I really liked in the book that we addressed was this idea of miracles of protection. And I bet every family can tell some stories about that. One of my favorite verses in the Book of Mormon, or at least chapters, is in 1 Nephi chapter 22, where it talks about the preservation of the righteous. In verse 17, it says that He will preserve the righteous by His power, and the righteous need not fear, for they shall be saved. And then another verse, just a few down in verse 19, the righteous shall not perish. And there's more. This idea of this protection in the last days is mentioned over and over again. And I don't think there's a parent out there or a grandparent, and I know you guys are, Matt, you're a parent and a grandparent, but you probably pray for the protection and safety and peace of your children at least every night. And I know that's one of our constant prayers, as your children are all over the world. And
For sure.
On this occasion, it was something that happened to one of our twin daughters, Madison, who had dropped my wife off at the airport at LAX at 4:00 in the morning, and realized she was about to run out of gas after she had dropped Janie off, and then recognized that as she would pull off on an exit, that she was just she felt so creeped out by where she was. It just didn't look safe. And then she finally decides to pull over at this little convenience gas station store with burglar bars, all over the...
Yeah.
So the guy that's selling the gas is protected, but the people out there getting gas at 4 a.m. are in kind of a precarious situation. But anyway, as she's doing that, 2 police officers come up to her and basically say, "What are you doing here?" And "I'm just getting gas." No, you need to get out of here, and you need to get out of here quick. And so they actually give her a police escort all the way out to the main highway and drive with her for several miles. They even recognize that she's a member of the church, and I don't think they were, but our daughter recognized later as she's driving home that those were angels, right? That came, and who knows what could have happened, but she was scared out of her mind that night, and those angels were sent at the right time. And so, so that's one of the things we talk about in the book as well, is just these miracles of protection that are everywhere.
And on that point, Mark, I would have people refer to how many times President Nelson, since he was made our prophet, has used the word angels in his official talks.
Yeah.
It's a lot. He says we should expect them as much as we should expect miracles.
Yeah. Oh,
especially those who covenant keeping, covenant making, endowed members of the church. It's one of the powers that we are permitted to have as our endowment.
To have angels nearby.
Yeah.
I believe it.
Incredible. Great story. Well, I think too, as we talk about this book and things that we learned, there is a common question of what happens when you do pray, like you just mentioned, for the protection of your kids, or when you do pray for someone to be healed, or you pray for something that you want in your life and it doesn't come.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough when you have all the faith in the world, and
people have lost their faith because of those type of things, right?
Yeah. And I don't think we have time really today to address that in this podcast, but we address that topic head on, and it's probably my favorite chapter.
Yeah, it's the last chapter of the book, right?
Yeah.
When miracles don't happen.
Yeah, and why and how. Maybe just to say one thing, but Jesus himself knows exactly what that feels like.
Yeah.
As he walked into the Garden of Gethsemane, he had never performed an atonement before. He didn't know, but he knew it was going to be an incredibly difficult experience, and he prayed 3 different times for help. And guess what? His prayer was never answered.
Yeah.
He did not get the help. His prayer wasn't for help or comfort. His prayer was that this cup might pass from me.
Yeah.
It did not. So if there's anyone who knows what it feels like to not have a prayer answered, it's him.
Right.
I mean, we do know that Luke says that an angel came to comfort him, but it comforted him through an ordeal that he was praying, that if there's any way that I don't have to go through this, please let that pass. Well, that prayer was not answered.
Yeah.
There's a great story in that chapter, too, that you wrote about President Oaks as a young boy. Had that same thing. His own dad had numerous blessings of healing.
From tuberculosis, yeah.
And his dad died, and I can't remember how old he was.
Elder Oaks was 8.
Yeah.
His dad was just probably 40, something like that, yeah.
But anyway, I think that's one of my favorite chapters because everyone faces that at some point in their life. And sometimes it's not just because we don't have faith.
Yeah.
So
it's part of the Lord's plan in some way. Yeah. So, man, I think that's great. Well, here's what I say. Thank you so much for being part of this today, for coming down here from Burley, Idaho, just for this sole reason.
That's right.
To talk about this miracles, but we want people to know that one of the great experiences in any family is to watch miracles occur. And so one of the invitations we would give today as we talk about LDS, let's do something, is to teach our children and grandchildren about miracles, to teach them what our prophets have said about miracles, to even consider keeping a miracle journal, or at least where we can see God's hand in our lives every day. Because I think, Matt, and I know you think the same thing, we believe it, that actually there are probably thousands of miracles happening in our lives all the time, and we just don't see all of them.
100%.
And so many of them are just so small.
And we've probably forgot more miracles than we remember, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, we remember maybe the huge ones, but the simple, tender mercies, like you just talked about, of seeing someone in an old relationship on an airplane or something. How many times that happened? We don't write it down. We forget about it.
And that would be the next thing, is we write these down, but we also pass the miracles down. I mean, how many miracles have happened to us that our children don't even know about? I feel embarrassed sometimes when my kids say to me, "Hey, Dad, we never knew that. We never knew that happened to you." Anyway, let's be open about that and share those experiences with our children and grandchildren and bless their lives that way too.
That's awesome. 100%. Those are great thoughts. Before we wrap this up, I just wanted to thank you for the experience of writing. This is the first book I've ever been a part of writing. It's been on my bucket list since I was a missionary that I wanted to write a book. And this is, for me, it was a real rewarding experience. I want to just thank you for bringing me along and coaching me along on how this all works, because you've obviously published numerous books. But it was a great experience, so thanks a lot.
It was awesome, Matt, to work with you as well. That was fun. And I know we've already talked about, hey, what should we do next?
Yeah.
So we'll have to figure that out.
And going through the publishing process, I'm grateful for Cedar Fort, for publishing, picking us up and publishing. I think it's good. It's pretty cool of them to do that too. They didn't have to do that.
I do too. We're grateful for them as well. Well, everyone, thank you, Matt. Thank you for being with us, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We would encourage you to, if you think this could bless someone's life, to share it with them, this episode. And we look forward to being with you again next week.